Welcome into the Energy Tech Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike Flores, here in lovely San Diego, California, as part of Inductive Automation, Ignition's Solar and Battery Discovery Day. And with me is a guest I've been trying to track and get on the show for some time, but I finally cornered him, Mr. Nathan Davenport, the VP of Sales Engineering at Cirrus Link. Nathan, it's good to have you on the show, man.
Good to be here. Thanks, Mike. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a while. My schedule's always a little hairy, so I appreciate your patience.
No, we appreciate you. You know, in the background, we've had many a conversation with Nathan Davenport. So, Nathan, kind of talk about what your role is at Cirrus Link.
You bet. So currently I'm the VP of Sales Engineering, but I kind of started out as a developer on the team.
Yeah.
And as I've been with Cirrus Link almost 8 years. Before that, I spent 13 years at Microsoft. So as I kind of ramped up and became more familiar with, of course, MQTT and Sparkplug on top of MQTT, my role just continued to grow. Normally, at this point, I get tossed into either, pretty gnarly fires, like
Yes.
we're huge scale, we're breaking, we're finding bottlenecks, we're finding places where we need to optimize. Come in, tell us, what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong? And if we can't figure out the problem, help me get there, And kind of beyond that, I kind of bridge, sales, support, and my engineering team, right?
Yes.
Trying to be sure that you got to feel your customer's pain, in order to know if you're doing the right thing. And I got to get in and feel a little bit of pain and help try to make things better and help guide where I can. And that's my role.
Well, Nathan, I think you're kind of selling yourself short. And here's what I mean.
Yeah.
So I've been working with you for a bit, and you and I were talking about this last night. I always you use the exact word. You get parachuted into an organization that needs either strategic or tactical help
Yes.
with either their data or how they're delivering that data on a pipeline,
Yes,
which
sir.
puts you right in the middle with Cirrus Link.
Yes.
That's what I think. And I think when you target three main areas that I always see every time I get parachuted in, just like you, cost, complexity, and cybersecurity.
There you go.
And you have these three main categories that always come up. And, you're positioned at the right place with Cirrus Link. And one of those, I think, especially in renewable energy, you just had a conversation right now with Nextera.
Yes,
I think we can use that name.
Yeah.
So you had a really good presentation. And one of the things that came out of that were, in my mind, are those three main things. And I want you to kind of share a little bit of when you parachuted in with Nextera or anybody else, when you parachute in, what is the first thing you notice? Maybe it's their data, maybe it's the legacy, maybe it's a competing interest. There's a lot of things we could talk about here, but in your mind, in your experience, when you get parachuted in, what's the first thing you think is a challenge?
Usually for me, I need to understand the landscape that I'm trying to operate in. And so before I can even begin to dig into the details, whether it's config, the data pipeline or a broker implementation, I need them to kind of help me understand what the environment looks like, And then from there, you're certainly right. We end up with data issues.
Right.
We end up with network issues. Those are usually the worst issues because you got to prove that, and that's usually pretty difficult to prove. So you spend a lot of time digging through Wireshark logs, and trying to do real simple tests to try to validate, if you will, that the network really is the problem. And so I don't even know if I could say there's any one thing. It's all of it, Mike. It's the whole thing. Usually after they kind of give me that 100,000-foot view, then I ask them, what are the problems you're seeing and where are you going? What are your goals here? Because a lot of time I get a lot of information, but I don't get the North Star. Like, what are we trying to do? What do you want out of this, right?
Yes.
And then from there, I can help, the technical problems, like, we'll get there. We'll root cause them. We'll figure it out. Config, network, broker side, whatever it is. Don't care. We'll get there.
Right.
But if you can't tell me what your strategy is and where you're going, I can't provide the proper long-term guidance. Or give you my opinion in an educated way.
No, I think you're right. You said something that was interesting because you and I were on a call with another client.
Yeah.
And we had Snowflake in the mix.
Yeah.
And what we learned from that was that ultimately the client had no written North Star data strategy.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely.
And I think that is one of the biggest things that I see, and I'm sure you deal with when you get parachuted into this. It's
Yeah.
not so much they don't know. I think it is a strategy, a digital strategy.
Yeah.
And if I want to take a term from someone like Walker Reynolds, I'll use his. It's a really good quote that I carry with me all the time. He says that that data has to become the commodity of the business, right?
Yeah.
And in doing so, a lot of these companies, Nathan, they get into a digital transformation unknowingly. It's
Yeah.
almost like they transform unknowingly.
Right.
They're not planned out. They're not curated.
Right.
It's just, we want to solve this problem, and now all of a sudden we're transforming.
Right. You're kind of walking along slowly, simple, slow pace, and then all of a sudden you're in the middle of a hurricane. You
Yes.
know what I mean? And once you're in the middle of that, sometimes it's kind of hard to think clearly. You really do need to step back and ask yourself, what are you trying to do here?
Yeah. Yes.
Have that digital transformation strategy, that North Star defined, at least so when we get off in the weeds or the tornado is basically blinding us, we can always come back to, hey, what were we trying to solve again? Because you wrote it down. Let's go look at that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so I think you're right. They come into a digital transformation. Now that they've got a data strategy, and let's suppose, Nathan, that there is a company that does it. I know that everyone likes to offer up digital transformation. You've got books, you've got presentations, you've got frameworks.
Yep.
And ultimately, Cirrus Link, in its capability, is there to support that.
You bet.
And, I think what Cirrus Link has done is been able to offer up some great tools in that pipeline. And one of those is some upgrades that recently came to Cirrus Link or recently been released for Cirrus Link.
Yes.
And I want you to talk about that and relate that to your presentation, because you did a really good job talking through that about Nextera
You bet.
as one of them. So kind of share a little bit about that, the improvement of MQTT, the improvement of Cirrus Link, and how that relates to that kind of project.
You bet. We're always looking to improve our products, right?
Yeah.
To figure out what's our breaking point, where do we need to scale? At what point are we reaching kind of the top end? And so we've made significant improvements in the way that we manage data at MQTT Engine.
Yes.
We do some intelligent things with queuing. So I don't know how deep I really want to get into it, but we have capabilities in MQTT Engine such that when messages are coming in, if Engine is not able to call into the Ignition platform fast enough to either update tags, update config, whatever that may be, messages start to back up in these queues.
Right.
And so that's going to directly affect heat, right, consumption on the Ignition gateway.
Right.
And one of the things we realized that we were doing is anytime Engine had to request a rebirth, we were chewing all the messages in that queue only to throw them away. Because if there's a case where Engine has to request a rebirth, it's
Right.
not going to be able to correct itself, its state, until it gets that birth. So if there are a bunch of data messages queued up in that pipeline, we need to be dropping them, because we effectively will drop every piece of that data because I need the birth, but it's stacked behind 50 messages.
Right.
And so what we realized is we were just unnecessarily spinning on that queue, looking at a message and going, yep, nope, that's still not right, give me a
Right.
rebirth, nope, still not right, give me a rebirth, over and over and over and over and over again. So it's finding these cases, and this was fixed maybe in 4.0.30 of the modules for Ignition 8.1, which means they would have been in probably the initial set of modules for 8.3.5.0.0. Certainly if you're running 8.3, you need to be running the latest for sure.
Right.
And so it's things like that. That's just one example of a real small change in code, if you will. My dev team might be like, hey, that wasn't a real small change in code. But at least it seems simple when you explain it like that, right? But that change greatly impacted MQTT Engine gateways at scale,
Yes.
And so that's just one example of understanding the landscape well enough, your product well enough, the data pipeline well enough to know where those optimizations go and why. And to be able to explain to a customer or anybody that may question exactly why you're doing the things that you do. Why would you toss that message away? Well, because I'm going to throw it away anyway.
Right.
And you don't want me chewing CPU and RAM unnecessarily.
Right.
And at scale, especially like NextEra scale,
right,
you can't pay those penalties, man. You just can't.
Right.
You have to be able to do this well, do it fast, and scale quickly. And if you're choking on things unnecessarily, all you're doing is hurting, you're hurting the gateways, you're degrading the quality of the data, I want my customers to trust our products,
Yeah.
And so when it looks like it's flailing around from the outside, that degrades trust. That's just one of the features that we've released here recently. Another one that you might like a lot that I don't know if everybody knows of is that we support alarm events over Sparkplug MQTT.
Yeah. Describe that a little bit. You talked about that.
Yeah. So we tried. Back when I first joined Cirrus Link, we were actually sending alarm config over Sparkplug MQTT. But the problem with that is that we would end up with duplicate config. So you'd have config at the edge, right? We'd fire an alarm there, and then we'd duplicate that config over to the engine side. We'd fire the alarm there. Now you got two alarms. And sometimes alarm config that can exist in one way on the edge simply can't exist in the same way on the engine machine, There are cases where if you are ever needing to go reference another tag, but it's not a tag that lives on the engine side because it's not actually getting published by transmission,
right,
that config won't even work. All right, so we took that away, and customers were like, hey, this isn't going to work for us. We want to be able to, we have some GAN connections, but we moved away from the GAN to Sparkplug MQTT, and you guys need to give us these native capabilities.
Right.
So we finally added that, and what we do is we send the alarm event, Mike. We don't send the config, we just send the event. So now it fires on the edge.
Right.
Transmission is hooked into the alarm subsystem.
Okay.
Gets that alarm, drops it in a Sparkplug data message, sends it across to engine. Engine gets that thing, acts back to transmission, and we insert it into the alarm subsystem on the engine side. So that's going to go to your alarm status table, your alarm journal if you have one configured, right? And it's going to be there. It's going to be a first-class citizen on that other gateway. No GAN connection required, right? The last bit, guys, the last gap, the last big rock to move for us, we can do. I'm gonna hop back and then hop ahead here. We can do alarms over MQTT to a gateway and then back out over MQTT,
right.
So we can chain, Sparkplug MQTT, and so on. Well, we can bring them in over the GAN. We can bring them in over Sparkplug MQTT and then GAN them out. All of that stuff works, right? So I can get my alarms out to my front end over the GAN.
Right.
But the last rock that we have to move, and we're going to need some platform support, and Inductive has committed to looking into this and see if they can make it happen, is we need to be able to hook those alarms into a pipeline, into a notification pipeline, right?
Got
and
it.
The problem is that as far as we understand it, you can't really wire an alarm event to a pipeline without config on the gateway.
Got it.
We have no way to get that there. So we've been talking with the dev team at IA, and we're trying to come up with some solutions here. That's the last bit, guys. But now we can send alarms at scale over Sparkplug MQTT. We had a couple data center customers that were sending thousands of alarms at a time over Sparkplug MQTT.
Wow.
And I will say, if you're doing alarms over Sparkplug MQTT, please run the latest modules. We had to iterate a few times. I think that stuff dropped in 4.0.30, and then we've made changes all the way up to the latest 4.0.35, and I would say the same thing for 8.3. Pick up the latest module.
Yes.
Yep.
And so put that in the pipeline perspective. What I'm hearing then is a little more a little more back and forth capability there, a little more improvement there for
That's
alarms.
Right. That's right.
Which is highlighted. Anything else there? I mean,
certainly. I should have actually added with alarms. You can now ACK at the edge. It'll automatically ACK at engine. You can ACK from engine or clear from engine. That goes back to the edge.
Yes.
So you have that full two-way, alarm state management. We will, no matter where you take that action,
right.
Make sure the other side knows, right?
Got it.
Let's see what else. Certainly within the Ignition platform, we made another recent change. This is probably really new. Latest modules 4.0.35, 5.03, or maybe even 5.04 for 8.3. We realized that we were persisting default config on MQTT engine tags, and it had to do with the managed tag provider API flavor we were calling.
Yes.
And so what we realized, we didn't really see this as much in 8.1, but we saw it a lot in 8.3, because when 8.3 has to start up, it goes and it reads all that configuration from disk, And if you have a ton of configuration, that startup can take a while.
Right.
And so I had a box I was doing a perf test on, 5 million tags, with 1 million of them changing once a second on ignition 835. But that was pulled. That was pulled over a regression of some sort. So 836 are the golden bits, guys. If you're doing big scale stuff with MQTT Engine, you better be running 836 or above. Trust me, you want that.
Yes.
So we figured out when I restarted that gateway, and it took 90 minutes to start. I'm like, okay, this is not going to work for us. We talked to our counterparts. We figured out what we were doing, and we made that change. And so Wes, VP of, actually now he's the CTO of Cirrus Link. He made that change. We got that thing cranked out. Now we won't persist default config. So imagine if you're running on an old 8.3 box and you're running an old version of Engine, you might see significant gains if you were to go blow away all your tags under Engine and, of course, let them repopulate automatically using Sparkplug MQTT.
Right.
You're going to clean up all that config that didn't need to be there on that delete, and then we're going to lay those tags down again, but not persist config that doesn't need to be persisted. So anyway, that's just one more improvement. Those are the ones that are top of mind for the Ignition platform. Chariot, our off Ignition platform MQTT broker, MQTT Server. We just came out with a new version of that last month.
Yes.
Probably one of the biggest features there is we now fully support containerization. We finally delivered it. You guys have asked for it. You've been asking for a long time.
Yes.
And we were able to make that happen. So now you can fully run that thing.
Yeah, in fact, we're ready to run with that. We're actually looking at deploying that with a Neve device.
Nice.
There.
That's
with
great.
Containerization.
That's
I think
great.
that's going to be a big plus just because it gives us a lot of zero trust capability because, like I said, everything falls inside of cost, complexity, and cyber.
Sure.
So I think it really does check the box for that as well on the Neve platform, having it there.
Absolutely.
So that's some capability.
We put the bridge in there as well.
Yes.
So the bridge traditionally was headless, right? It had no UI.
Right.
It was basically baked into an Ubuntu Linux image that we would ship on Azure Marketplace or AWS Marketplace.
Right.
And so we needed a way to be able to build out, restful endpoints for that and a proper UI so you could make it easier to config. People got tired of having to SSH into boxes and, try to figure out which text editor.
Grab a few keys.
Yeah,
exactly.
Vim your way through all that, or whatever your favorite text editor is.
Right.
But so we built full UI on there. It's fully backed by REST, and we actually have the ability now for you to run that thing on your own hardware, on-prem if you want to. What we've added is the ability for you to meter now, not through the cloud marketplace, but instead through a Stripe endpoint that we expose.
Yeah.
And so the idea being, hey, you're not locked into Ubuntu Linux. You want to install it on Windows. You want to install it on the Linux variant of your choice, Red Hat Enterprise, whatever you want. Go forth, do it.
Well, not just that, not just that, Nathan, but you're looking at this at the edge. I'm seeing this on the other side in the business perspective. And what I mean by that is once you're doing that at the edge, then guess what? You can reduce that cloud cost because you do have customers that are actually going to either a VPC or they're standing up their own NVIDIA boxes. Now they're standing up NVIDIA alone, where they really just want to reduce that cost. So if I was in the business perspective of it all, when I see that pipeline, I see the advantage of doing that at the edge. I see I'm maintaining local control of my stack, and not just that, I'm keeping that there for my control for my plant. But at the same time, I still reduce my cost for cloud traffic.
I like it. Yeah, definitely.
So that's a big plus. And, I want to keep you on the show, but I know I can. I'm getting waved over here. I can hear it.
We might have to do another one of these, Mike.
We are.
I feel
And, you can catch Nathan here at the show here at SBDD in San Diego. He's here the rest of the day if you can see him.
Come see me.
But we are going to get him on the show again.
I'd love to.
Because, Nathan, you've been really helpful. We appreciate what Cirrus Link is doing in the ecosystem with Ignition. And with that, I am your co-host, Mike Flores, with the Energy Tech Podcast right here in San Diego. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, it's great to have Nathan Davenport on from Cirrus Link.
Appreciate you, Mike.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, brother.
That was awesome.
Appreciate it.
I love it, man. Thank you so much.
I'll be back.
Yes.